Part 27. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 261. 7 years. Gu Qingsong's face was ashen, and he even suspected that the two people had had an affair 7 years ago. Especially because Su Qiu looked so similar to him, it made him feel sick to his stomach. What else was found? Qin Yang's eldest brother-in-law was the shopkeeper of Liujia Tea House. Su Zhou made a scheme and sold high-quality tea to Jianqing at a price that was 30% lower than the market price, and took away thousands of taels of silver. This whole it was Jianqing who filled the bill, but for some reason, the Lu family didn't ask Jianqing to repay it, but instead sent people to Zhuangzi to do things. Where the guard was confused, Gu Qingsong understood. Perhaps this situation was done by the Lu family together with Su Zhou for Qin Yang, in order to make Qin Yang betray him and trick him into getting his wife and son dead. Gu Qingsong's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, and he was going to go to the secret cell to interrogate Mr. Lu himself. Suddenly, the servant came in a hurry. "Your Majesty, Vice General Qin is here. He is standing at the door holding a thorn to apologize." Gu Qingsong walked towards the door with a gloomy expression. The mansion door opened a side door. Qin Yang didn't wear any clothes, carrying a thorn stick on his back, kneeling in the cold winter. The cold wind was raging, and his skin turned blue from the cold, but his waist was straight. "Your Majesty, I'm here to apologize." Qin Yang heard the footsteps and looked up at Gu Qingsong, who was standing a few steps away. His teeth were chattering with the cold and his hands were tightly clenched into fists. "My subordinate came back from attending the celebration banquet. When I was drunk, I returned to Jian's house and saw someone sleeping on the bed. I didn't think much about it and thought it was Jian, so I later found out it was the princess. My subordinate wanted to confess to you and apologize. Later, I cared about my family and concealed it for a moment. Instead, the blame fell into the hands of the princess. She used this matter to blackmail my subordinates, work for her, and deceive you that your wife and children in Dazhu are already dead." Death. Gu Huizi came to Ziliang. "I was worried that the matter would be exposed, so I told Mrs. Lu about it. She ordered me to silence Gu Huizi so that you, father and son, would not recognize each other and expose her lies." Qin Yang said regretfully, I know I have made a big mistake and I cannot make another mistake again. I come here to plead guilty. No matter how the prince punishes me, I am willing to accept the punishment." Gu Qingsong didn't expect that this was the reason why Qin Yang betrayed him, and he couldn't help but feel sad in his heart. Without Gu Huizi's words, Gu Qingsong would have sentenced Qin Yang to death after hearing his confession. Now when I look back and think about it, he wanted power for revenge. After gaining power, this identity gave him too much control. Now that his great revenge had been avenged, he should relieve himself of this responsibility and return to his hometown, instead of staying in Ziliang for Guyunzhen. Although he didn't like Mrs. Lu, it was his responsibility for Mrs. Lu to give birth to a child for him. Because of this responsibility, he abandoned his first wife and children who were waiting for him in Dazhu. He also had an unshirkable responsibility for the death of his youngest son. Although Qin Yang was wrong, he was the one who made the biggest mistake. "Qin Yang, you have been with me for 6 or 7 years. You are a brother who has lived through life and death, someone who can trust each other's back. I never thought that one day you would betray me." Gu Qingsong felt an unprecedented sadness in his heart. "The friendship between you and me has been wiped out. You can go." Prince Qin Yang looked at Gu Qingsong in shock, as if he didn't expect that he would let him go so easily. Gu Qingsong waved his hand and walked into the house. The doorman closed the door. Gu Qingsong went to the secret prison. Liu's father, who was hiding in the dark, saw Gu Qingsong's leaving figure, his eyes full of evil. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Bao Bao. Chapter 262. Father, aren't you going to save my sister? Lu Rongran gritted his teeth. Gu Song, this ungrateful bitch, if it hadn't been for my sister, he would have died long ago. How could he be as good as he is today? He is now a king with a different surname. How can we, a businessman, fight against him? Your sister is too impulsive and he has the handle. If you want to save people, you have to start with Zhener and let him force Gu Song to let go. Father Lu has never been a good person. If Gu Song dares to treat his daughter like this, he must pay the price. Doesn't he care about that woman in Dazhu? He plans to liquidate and won't let our family go. Pack your things and run away now. Go back to Dazhu and capture his first wife and children in Dazhu. They can be used as life-saving charms for our family. Lu Rongran's eyes flashed with viciousness, and he had murderous intentions towards Gu's mother and others. If he dares to touch my sister, I will let him and Dezhou's original wife be separated from each other and reunited in the underworld. After saying these words, Lu Rongran went back to the house to pack his bags and prepared to escape through the back door. As soon as he walked out of the back door, a long sword with a cold light was placed on his neck. Lu Rongran turned pale with fright. Moun said coldly, Master Lu, please come with me. Before Lu Rongran could speak, the hilt of the sword suddenly hit him on the back of the head. Lu Rongran fell to the ground. Moun picked up the person, threw him into the carriage, and continued squatting. Seeing this scene, Liu's father was so frightened that he returned to the house and went directly to Gu Yunzhen's house, intending to use Gu Yunzhen to escape. He thought of what Lu did to Gu Huizi, and just hoped it would succeed. Gu Song dared to arrest his son. Gu Huizi's death in their hands was a lesson to Gu Song. After Gu Huizi and Suwan left the mansion, they took a carriage back to the palace. My mother used to stay in her hometown. Although she was waiting for him, now she is willing to live in Beijing, which shows that she is ready to forget him. After so many years, my mother has gradually come out of the pain. The most important thing in her heart is you and her second brother. Third sister Suwan hugged Gu Huizi from behind and pressed her face against his back. You don't have to force yourself. If you don't want to admit it, just don't admit it. I believe Mom is a decisive person and knows his situation. Finally, I will live well in the future. Gu Huizi held her hands and said, compared with the news that he would live to marry another wife and have other children, my mother would rather he was dead. But she has always been tolerant towards her own people. No matter how betrayal he is, I am sorry for my mother. He is still the father of my third sister and me. My mother wishes him well from the bottom of her heart, but it will inevitably make her sad. Suwan fell into silence thinking of Mother Gu's tolerance towards her. Gu Huizi was unwilling to tell his mother the news, fearing that Gu Song would not give up easily and his mother would know sooner or later. It may not be a good thing for my mother to know. He will always live in her heart, because he is still the same in her heart, and he died in the mouth of wild beasts for the sake of this family. If she knows that he will get married and start a business, she will be sad for a while, and wait until she regains her mood, forget King Changxing, and truly live your own life. In Suwan's mind, Gu's mother was a mentally tough person who would be able to get out of the shadows quickly. You're right. Gu Huizi smiled, turned around, and hugged Suwan into his arms. Mother should have her own life, and shouldn't waste it on him. The carriage drove slowly through an alley. In the quiet alley, there was only the sound of the wheels rolling over the bluestone slabs. Suddenly, the people who were ambushing on both sides of the alley set up their bows and arrows, lit fire on the arrowheads, aimed at the slowly approaching carriage, drew their bows and arrows and flew away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Bao Bao. Chapter 263. Arrows with open flames shot through the air and hit the carriage directly. Chi Shiliu, who was driving the car, pulled out his sword to block the rocket, quickly took out 2 projectiles from his arms, and threw them at the walls on both sides of the alley. They exploded with a bang, and a thick fog filled the air, and the people who were ambushing on the wall inhaled the poisonous smoke fell down one after another. Suwon opened the curtain and took a look at the white smoke rising from the wall. 16, go and see who it is. Yes, Chi Shiliu climbed up with a vigorous posture. Pick up the person hanging on the wall and throw it down directly. Gu Huizi looked through it and determined that these people were just ordinary hired guards. Suwon pulled out the arrow from the quiver, checked the arrowhead, and found that it was smeared with poison. He couldn't help but sneered, Lu, this is making it impossible for us to come back. At this time, Mon drove a carriage and arrived. Master, Lu Mao did not come out from the Changxin palace. His subordinates sent people to guard the door. Lu Rongran has been caught. What do you plan to do with him? Detain them for interrogation. Gu Huizi glanced at the guards on the ground. Send these people to King Changxin. Yes, Mon carried the person to the car. Chi Shiliu followed to help. Mon returned to Changxin Prince's mansion. Suwon thought of Gu Yunzhen, what will King Changxin do to the Lu family? She was worried that she would relent. How he treats Mrs. Lu is his business. Mrs. Lu is guilty of my fault, and the outcome has been decided. Gu Huizi's eyes were dark, and there was no way he would let Mrs. Lu go. Suwon felt relieved. Let's not wait until the new year to return to Dazhu. Let's start tomorrow, right? The second brother and third sister are studying in seclusion with Mr. Zhang. Only my mother is alone in the capital, so she will be lonely. What she was most worried about was that Mrs. Lu would act like a monster and send people to Dazhu to attack Gu's mother. Although there are people protecting Gu's mother, Liu's methods are so cunning that she is afraid that she will be unable to prevent her. Okay, Gu Huizi responded. Changxin Palace. In the gloomy dark prison, the walls were covered with torture instruments, stained with blood. Suzhou and Lu were imprisoned in a secret prison. King Changxin stood at the door and heard a suppressed groan of pain coming from inside. There was no emotion on his face. The orange firelight imprinted on his face, unable to remove the layer of ice covering his face. A small square window was opened on the door panel, and he could clearly see that Su Chu's body was covered with deep and shallow blood marks from the whip, and his mouth was so hard that he couldn't pry it out. Ms. Lu fell to the ground, her face pale, and one of her little fingers was cut off. Your Majesty, the guard stepped forward and asked, what are your orders? King Changxin muttered, separately interrogate the 2 people. The guard was surprised, and without asking any questions, he went in and ordered the executioners inside to separate the people. After a while, the guards dragged Suzhou out. Su Chu gasped to relieve the pain, his head was covered in cold sweat, the veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes filled with hatred were staring at Gu Qingsong at the door. With a clang sound, Suzhou was imprisoned in a secret cell next door. Gu Qingsong waited for 2/4 of an hour before entering Su Chu's interrogation room. Su Chu's hands were hung up by iron chains, and there was no intact part of his body. The guard held a red-hot iron in his hand and was about to press it on his chest. When he saw Gu Qingsong coming in, he immediately stood aside. Your Majesty. Gu Qingsong waved his hand and motioned for them to step back. Suzhou bulged his eyes and glared at Gu Qingsong fiercely. Gu Qingsong's eyes fell on his face. There was a fake scar on the bridge of his nose. Even he couldn't tell which part of this face was different from his. Ms. Lu can't bear the punishment. You already recruited them all 7 years ago. He paused deliberately and observed Su Chu carefully. His pupils tightened and he suddenly became nervous. Gu Qingsong said calmly, I will give you a chance. If you tell the truth, if Mrs. Lu did not lie to me, I will help you. Suzhou stared at Gu Qingsong closely, trying to get clues from his face. Did Lu tell everything? What was explained? Have you explained Zhen's matter? Or maybe Lu didn't say anything and Gu Qingsong was deceiving him. Gu Qingsong's face suddenly turned cold, and he said harshly, if she is still trying to deceive this king, I will send you to the underworld to keep her company. Su Qiu tried his best to stay calm and slowly analyzed Gu Qingsong's words. Mrs. Lu, a woman who is greedy for life and afraid of death, will definitely not reveal Gu Yunzhen's life experience. No one knows better than him that Gu Qingsong doesn't like Lu at all and has not touched her for so many years. If Mrs. Lu had an affair with him, Gu Qingsong would only feel that the man's dignity was damaged. The fact that Gu Yunzhen was not his son made the situation particularly serious. Gu Qingsong knew Gu Yunzhen's life experience and would not interrogate him so calmly. He would have stabbed them both to death on the spot, so why bother to extract a confession? Mrs. Lu knew very well that she could say anything, but this matter could only rot in her stomach. Ms. Lu and I met 7 years ago. She said that I looked similar to her lover, and she helped me several times. She was beautiful, gentle, and considerate, and helped me solve my problems. It was hard not to be attracted to her. At that time, I didn't know that she was married, I only knew that she died of a man. Later I found out that she was the woman of the dignified King Changxing. I was afraid and retreated, but she was unwilling to let me go and kept me in captivity if she dared to escape. You have to find ways to deal with me and maintain this shady relationship. She went to see me yesterday and told me what happened between her and you, and begged me to play you and stir up a father-son relationship between you and Gu Huizi. As long as I succeeded, she would give me my freedom. I was so excited for a moment. Agree. Su Qiu gritted his teeth and said, I didn't expect that Gu Huizi was very alert and quickly discovered something was wrong with me, so he had nothing more to do than this. Gu Qingsong frowned, always feeling that something was wrong. Su Qiu was too calm. The fact that he had an affair with Lu and pretended to be him had already been revealed before he was put in a secret prison. He said before that Lu had confessed everything, and Su Qiu was obviously very nervous. After observing him later, he suddenly became very calm and took the initiative to confess. What's more, he had an affair with Mrs. Lu. Even if he escaped, Mrs. Lu would not dare to do anything to him in a big way. Qin Luo went to investigate and found that over the years, the Lu family had not arranged for anyone to keep an eye on Suzhou. He had many opportunities to escape, but he did not escape. When his identity was first exposed, Suzhou was still defending the Lu family, as if he had some leverage in the Lu family. If Suzhou loves Mrs. Lu, and he just said that Mrs. Lu confessed, according to normal psychology, Suzhou should have refuted it, or tried his best to ignore Mrs. Lu, saying that he forced her to do so. There must be something important that he has overlooked. Suddenly, Gu Qingsong thought that Suzhou and Lu had known each other for 7 years. 7 years. At that time, he and Lu were not married yet. Later, it was because Lu was pregnant. Gu Qingsong's face was ashen and he wanted to deny this absurd idea, but once he had this idea, he couldn't suppress his excitement. After all, Gu Yunzhen was born 1 month early, and Lu lied to him that he was born prematurely. If you think about it, there is a trace. He picked up the red-hot iron in the guard's hand and pressed it on Su Qiu's chest, with a gloomy look. Suzhou, I said that if you tell the truth, I will make your family happy. You didn't seize the opportunity, don't blame me. Cruel and vicious. Suzhou howled miserably, and upon hearing Gu Qingsong's words, panic flashed in his eyes. Gu Qingsong caught it and felt as if there was a piece of ice in his heart. No need to say more, he already knew it in his heart. Kill. Gu Qingsong dropped the iron and walked out of the secret cell. At this time, a guard came to report, Your Majesty, Dr. Su's people have sent a group of people to ambush them halfway to assassinate them. Gu Qingsong's eyes were sharp. How could he not understand? The Lu family sent people to assassinate Gu Huai and silence him. Bring it here. Gu Qingsong dropped these words and went to Liu's darkroom. Mrs. Lu curled up in pain, her clothes were soaked by the cold water, and the cold wind made her tremble. Hearing the noise, Mrs. Lu opened her eyes. The moment she saw Gu Qingsong, her eyes burst into light, igniting a touch of life. Is Gu Qingsong still willing to come? Because Gu Yunzhen begged for mercy and was willing to spare her life. Your Majesty, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me this time. Zhener cannot live without her mother. I am willing to spend the rest of my life trying to atone for my mistakes and pray for my sister and Huizi. Suddenly, Mrs. Lu, a flash of inspiration flashed, and he stretched out a hand to grab the hem of Gu Qingsong's robe. Your Majesty, I can go to Dazhu and explain to my sister clearly that I was the one who took you away in confusion. You have always been thinking about them and have not given up. Your wife abandons your son, please ask her to forgive you. Gu Qingsong resisted the urge to kill her with a sword, and said coldly, Lu, whose child is Yunzhen? Do you still need me to tell you? He squatted down, grabbed her chin with his hand, and forcefully the big one seemed to be crushed into pieces. Suzhou has confessed everything, and you still want to trick me into raising bastards for you. Ms. Lu was horrified, her eyes filled with fear, and she opened her mouth to explain. A group of guards carried the unconscious guard in, threw him on the ground, and poured cold water on him to wake him up. When she saw these people, she was frightened out of her wits. These people fell into the hands of Gu Qingsong. Could it be that the assassination of Gu Huizi was not successful? The king, the prince. Gu Qingsong wanted to cut this woman into pieces with 1,000 knives. If it weren't for her, he wouldn't be separated from his wife. His wife and children suffered greatly, and his youngest son died in infancy. He prayed for a bastard and sought famous doctors everywhere. Gu Qingsong almost squeezed it out through the gap between his teeth. If you have anything else to deceive me, I will tell you today. If you don't tell the truth, Yunzhen and the Lu family will all go down to keep you company. Mrs. Liu's neck seemed to be strangled, and she made a roaring sound in her throat. She grabbed Gu Qingsong's wrist and said painfully, don't kill them. I said, we have no relationship as husband and wife really. I lied to you. Gu Qingsong threw Ms. Lu to the ground, looked at the guard who had woken up with a scared face, and gnashed his teeth and said, you cut her into pieces with 1,000 cuts, a total of 3,000 cuts? If one less cut caused her to die early, you will do it for her. Got it? The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 264. Even though the guards had seen countless bloody scenes, this was their first time seeing Ling Kai's torture. As observers, they would feel a little uncomfortable at most, but it's not that they couldn't adapt. But if he is the one to be executed, and his fate is tied to this thin blade in his hand, he will have to endure huge psychological pressure. The guards were watching eagerly. The guards had no choice but to bite the bullet. When the knife went down, Ms. Lu howled in pain. She watched the sharp thin blade cut her legs and arms, and blood rushed out. The severe pain tugged on her nerves, and her whole body spasmed uncontrollably, making her want to scream. Fell to the ground and rolled around to relieve the pain. Liu's life has been smooth sailing, but she is most pampered and fearful of pain. Even the pain of giving birth made her worse than death, but now the punishment of being cut into pieces was hundreds or 1,000 times more painful than that pain. Despair swept through Ms. Lu. She was covered in cold sweat and stared at Gu Qingsong, who was watching coldly. Ms. Lu felt regretful for the first time. I regret provoking this heartless man. Even though there was no affection between the two people, she had been with him for 7 or 8 years, and he still didn't know that she had tricked him into separating from his wife and children. She was just lying to him. After Lu Gaixiang and Gu Huizi died, she asked him to give up to another man. How could he be so cruel to her when raising a child? The endless pain tortured her body and tore her soul apart, causing Liu's mind to collapse. All she wanted was pleasure. Gu Qing Song, you Gu Nian, these years of love. I beg you, kill me with one knife. Give me a happy death. But Ms. Lu was in so much pain that she could only gasp and couldn't say a word. Gu Qing Song looked at her delicate face, which was distorted by pain. Her eyes, illuminated by the firelight in the dark prison, were lifeless and filled with a strong desire to die. There were ferocious veins on Ms. Liu's forehead, and her pale lips moved, "Kill me." Gu Qing Song had no expression on his face and left the secret cell under her gaze. Liu's desperate howl came from inside, as if coming from hell, and it seemed particularly tragic in this dark prison. When he left the dark prison, the cold wind blew in, and the bloody smell on his body seemed to be blown away. Gu Qing Song went to Gu Yunzhen's yard. The maid guarding the door said, "Your Majesty." There was a muffled bang-dong sound in the house. Gu Qing Song immediately opened the door and walked in, striding into the inner room. He saw Gu Yunzhen sitting cross-legged on the bed with messy quilts, looking very flustered, as if he had done something wrong. "Father," Gu Yunzhen called in a low voice. Gu Qing Song's eyes fell on Gu Yunzhen's face. If he looked carefully, he looked a bit like him. As soon as he thought that he was the child born of the substitute Lu found, Gu Qing Song felt disgust and rejection in his heart, unable to face the child he loved from the bottom of his heart. After he faced up to his mistake and violated the Lu family, and learned of the child's existence, he chose to accept this mistake because he truly loved Gu Yunzhen. Even though he knew his true life experience, Gu Qing Song couldn't immediately shed his feelings for him. "Love and hate, that's all?" he asked the maid who followed him, "Who was here just now?" "Master Lu," the maid replied, and suddenly said in surprise, "Hey, why aren't you here?" Gu Yunzhen's face turned a little pale, his heart was in his throat, and he stared at Gu Qing Song with wide eyes, looking a little helpless and innocent. With a cold face, Gu Qing Song lifted Gu Yunzhen off the bed, lifted the bed board, and a tunnel entrance appeared in front of him. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 265. Father, Gu Yunzhen grabbed Gu Qing Song's finger with his small hand, with tears in his dark and bright eyes. "Grandfather said that someone wanted to arrest him and escape from Zhen's tunnel. He has been gone for a while, you don't bring him back, okay?" Gu Qing Song's hand that wanted to throw Gu Yunzhen away froze, but when he turned around and saw his pale and tender face, lingering with illness, he couldn't bear it. "I brought him back to protect him." Gu Qing Song made a gesture, and the guards in the dark instantly entered the tunnel to catch Lu Mao. He was not in a relaxed mood. He had executed Mrs. Lu late and Lu Mao had escaped. He was afraid that he would both be destroyed and do something to harm Gu Huizi or even Lu Gaixiang. Only by imprisoning people under your nose can you feel safe. Is that so? Gu Yunzhen wanted to believe his father, whom he trusted most in his heart, but after seeing his ruthlessness towards his mother and concubine, he felt a little afraid of him. He asked cautiously, "Will you forgive my mother-in-law?" No, Gu Qing Song will not continue to raise Gu Yunzhen. Even though he is still young, he is still old enough to think. The more certain facts are concealed, the easier it will be to cause unnecessary misunderstandings in the future. So he squatted down, looked at the boy he had carefully cared for and said seriously, "Everyone has to pay for their mistakes. Your mother got pregnant with someone else and pretended to be my child to gain fame. Your mother asked me to raise someone else's child for 5 or 6 years and secretly persecuted my own child. Zhen, I have raised you for so many years. I have given you true feelings. After learning your true life experience, it is false that I have no feelings for you, but I cannot keep you by my side. Gu Kingsong's cold and solemn face was very sad. Seeing Gu Yunzhen would remind him of how much he was played around by Mrs. Lu and his dead young son. He couldn't accept Gu Yunzhen without grudges. No one can choose their parents, you are an innocent child. Gu Qingsong watched Gu Yunzhen bite his own lips, tears falling down in big drops, crying silently, feeling equally uncomfortable in his heart, and turned away. Look at him, your body needs medical treatment. I will send you to Master Mingju of White Horse Temple. No, as soon as Gu Yunzhen opened his mouth, he couldn't hold it anymore and cried loudly, I don't want it. You are my father. I want to follow you and don't go anywhere. Father, please, don't leave me. I don't have a mother, I only have a father, Gu Yunzhen cried until snot bubbled out of his nose. He tightly grasped Gu Kingsong's hand with his fingers. The panic of being abandoned swept over him, and he prayed with all his strength, Father, please don't. If you don't want me, I'll be good and won't get sick or see the doctor, okay. Liu's despair and Gu Yunzhen's panic reminded Gu Qingsong of Lu Gaixiang. She was raising several children by herself and was in poverty. Her youngest son was seriously ill and she had no money for medical treatment. How desperate and frightened must she have been at that time? If he had been by her side, their youngest son would not have died and would still be alive today. Gu Huizi would not deny him as his father. Even though he had achieved great success and fame in this life, he was not worthy of being a husband or a father. He was only worthy of the monarch of the Western Liang Kingdom. Gu Qingsong said cruelly, Dong Xiu, pack his bags for him. Yes, Dong Xiu packed up the boxes quickly. Gu Qingsong also wrote a letter and gave it to Qin Ming, asking him to escort Gu Yunzhen to Bema Temple and hand the letter to Master Mingju personally. He divided half of the family property in the house and donated it to make sesame oil money, which was enough for Bema Temple to raise Gu Yunzhen as an adult. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 266. Father, I don't want to leave, I won't leave. Gu Yunzhen hugged Gu Kingsong's legs and cried hoarsely, don't leave Zhener behind. You said that when Zhener grows up, you will teach Zhener to ride horses and archery. Have you forgotten? Gu Kingsong's eyes instantly turned red, but he still showed no mercy. He opened Gu Yunzhen's fingers and said, from now on, your surname will be Su. Dong Xiu will stay with you to take care of you. When you become an adult, there will be a sum of money for you. What do you want in the future? Anything can be done. Qin Ming immediately picked up Gu Yunzhen and walked out. Gu Yunzhen struggled and shouted, Father. Gu Qingsong turned his back and no longer looked at Gu Yunzhen, whose face was full of tears. Soon, Qin Ming and his party left the Changxing Palace. After a while, Qin Luo also crawled out of the tunnel. My lord, I've escaped. Gu Qingsong looked gloomy and ordered, you lead the people to rush back to Dazhu and stay by Gaixiang's side. Once Lu Mao's traces are discovered, he will be captured. Yes, Qin Luo took the order and left. Gu Qingsong looked at the empty room, lingering with the faint fragrance of medicine, and felt as if his heart was empty. He left the yard and planned to go to the study to think about how to repair the father-son relationship with Gu Huizi and how to seek Lu Gaixiang's forgiveness. The guards came with the smell of blood and reported, Your Majesty, those people chopped Liu's head 3,357 times. How did they deal with it? Sent to the border to do hard labor. Gu Qingsong rubbed his brows and planned to go to the palace to find Su Wan now to find out about the Gu family's situation over the years. Yao Guang Hall. Gu Huizi was sitting by the stove, and Moun was reporting to him, Master, I interrogated Lu Rongran, and he confessed everything in order to survive. Back then, in order to get King Changxing, Lu asked someone to intercept him, and wanted to make a game. The beauty rescues the hero, but unexpectedly King Changxing has the skills to break one of the man's legs. Lu Shi devises a plan to arrange an ambush and assassination on the mountain where King Changxing is hunting, and finally falls off the cliff. The Lu family picked up the person and took him to the western Liang kingdom. King Changxing was in a coma for a while. He did everything in detail, telling how Gu Qingsong was plotted by Lu and how he told lies one after another. Gu Huizi lowered his eyes and stared at the letter in his hand. He listened to Moun's statement without any fluctuation in his heart, as if the story had nothing to do with him. After a long time, Gu Huizi folded the letter and said, "Does he know?" Moun shook his head. A hint of sneer appeared on the corner of Gu Huizi's lips. "No need to tell him." "Yes," Moun asked, "how to deal with Lu Ronren? Didn't Lu Mao get caught? He has been hiding in the Changxing prince's mansion. We are people from the great Zhou dynasty. We cannot disturb Zhoujiang and break into the Changxing prince's mansion to arrest people. There is no news about the people who are being watched in the prince's mansion. Most of them have escaped. Keep it for Lu Ronren, it will be useful in the future." "Yes." Moun stepped back. Suwan packed up the boxes and cages and came to Gu Huizi. Seeing that he looked tired, she knelt down beside him and massaged his forehead. "You should rest for a while. Later we will go to the queen to say goodbye to her." "Okay." Gu Huizi held Suwan's hand, pulled her into his arms, put his chin on her head, and nuzzled her gently. "If you were a mother, what would you do?" "Are you all okay?" Suwan thought carefully. "My mother has a very strong personality, and I'm afraid she can't tolerate sand in her eyes. After so many years, it doesn't matter whether there is this person or not. I just want to take good care of my children and grandson." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 267. Suwan had some basis for saying this. Although Gu's mother had been waiting for Gu Qingsong, it was because Gu Qingsong suddenly disappeared when the relationship between the two was strong. At that time, he was her god in mother's heart. Now after so many years, I suddenly learned about his existence and learned about Gu Qingsong's situation. The heavy filter in my heart was broken. I had to face the reality. I was sad and miserable. In the end, I was relieved, and I felt that it was nothing more than that. The person who has been thinking about him for most of his life has his own life, and she must only wish him the best. Compared to Gu Qingsong, Gu's mother cares more about her children. If none of the children accept Gu Qingsong, Gu's mother will not give him the slightest chance. Gu Hui was stunned, and pressed a kiss on her forehead with his thin lips. "We have to work harder." Suwan blushed. "I'm only 16 years old. It's still underage in modern times." Gu Huizi chuckled. "You're not young anymore." He lifted Suwan's chin, looked at her deeply, and said with a raised lip, "You can also raise her a little longer." Suwan's heart rippled. "If you don't sleep, we will go to see the queen now." "Let's go." Gu Huizi kissed her lips and let go of the person in his arms. The two people walked out of Yaoguang Palace together, and the palace maid sent a message. "Miss Su, King Changxing wants to see you. You tell him that he won't get any answers or help he wants from me. Whatever he wants to know, he can check it out himself." Suwan paused and said seriously, "You tell him one more sentence. Not everyone standing still. You must know that things are different and people are different." In the plot of the book, Gu's mother died, and Gu Qingsong never returned to Dezhou until the ending. In this case, it doesn't matter whether Gu Qingsong exists or not. The palace maid was stunned for a moment, then quickly responded, "I will go and send a message to King Changxing right now." Suwan held Gu Huizi's hand and walked forward, as if to comfort him, but also as if she was feeling something. Some waiting is just for a result. Gu Huizi remained silent. When the female officer at the entrance of Jing'an Palace saw the two people, she said, "Hello, you guys wait here for a moment, and I'll let you know." "Thank you," Suwan said. The female officer entered and came out soon. "Your Majesty, please come in." Suwan and Gu Huizi entered. The Supreme Queen was sitting on a Huanghuali chair. The two of them saluted. Suwan explained her intention. "The Supreme Queen, I came to disturb you today to say goodbye to you. We will return to Dazhu tomorrow." The Queen's sharp eyes fell on Suwan's face, and she was not surprised at all. "I thought you would leave after the new year, and you wouldn't be able to stay for a few more days." Suwan saw the regret and disappointment in the Queen's eyes and chose to remain silent. "You don't have to worry about what I will do to you." Qi Min promised to stay and continue to be her queen, responsible for teaching Wei Liuyan well. "You are a malleable talent. Although Wei Liuyan is not as good as you, there is one thing about her that is better than you. She has something in her heart." "People of Liang," the Supreme Empress closed her eyes and moved the beads in her hand, "whether you admit it or not, you are half of the blood of the Ziliang Kingdom, and you are the princess of the Ziliang Kingdom, even if you abandon it. Like my shoes, they are your backer." Suwan was stunned. "Go back, I'm tired," the Queen issued an order to expel the guests. Suwan and Gu Huizi knelt down and kowtowed to the Queen. "Thank you very much." The Supreme Empress heard the footsteps getting further and further away, and then she opened her eyes. She only had time to see two figures disappearing at the door. After a long silence, she asked the female officer next to her, "Has Suwan forgiven me for what I did? I didn't even call her imperial grandmother." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 268. The female officer made a chuff sound and said with a smile, "You are too serious with His Highness. She thinks you don't like her, so how dare you get close to you rashly?" The Supreme Queen. She was depressed, but she couldn't help but ordered, "Go and inform Qi Min, ask her to draw up an edict, send envoys to follow Suwan back to the Great Zhou dynasty, and tell the Great Zhou royal family that Suwan has made a contribution to the rescue and is from the Ziliang Kingdom, my benefactor. The cavalry of Ziliang Kingdom can be driven by her." This is a way to openly tell Dezhou that Suwan is someone the 11 Liang Kingdom wants to protect, so don't bully him. The female officer responded happily, "Slave, I will go and pass the message to the Queen." Suwan and Gu Huizi went to Mingxin Hall. Qi Min and Ji Xian were playing chess. The young couple came over, and Qi Min put away the chess game. "You are here just in time, let's have dinner together." "Okay," Suwan agreed and sat directly next to Qi Min. "We are here to say goodbye. We will leave back to Dazhu early tomorrow morning." Qi Min's smile faltered and she looked blankly at Ji Xian aside. Suwan's decision was too sudden. "We meet again in life, and we will have the chance to see each other again." Suwan briefly explained the relationship between Gu Qingsong and Gu Huizi. "I don't worry about my mother-in-law taking the child alone in Dazhu and celebrating the new year with her." Qi Min was reluctant to let go of Suwan. This was the first year the family had reunited, but she could understand Suwan's mood, especially Gu's mother's care for Suwan, and she was grateful to Gu's mother. "Next year you have time to come to Ziliang, or your father and I have time to go back to Dazhu to celebrate the new year with you." Qi Min did not force him to stay, and glanced at Gu Huizi and Ji Xian. "We too have something to say." Ji Xian had something to tell Gu Huizi, and the two men went to the side hall. "I will stay in Ziliang, and you will be in charge of the affairs of the Great Zhou dynasty." Ji Xian took out a token and gave it to Gu Huizi. "You may as well go back early. The Queen Mother and the Prince have no one to suppress them, so they are afraid of falling into their hands. Your road will be a little more difficult. The Prince and the Queen Mother will not be able to stand up until the Queen and Chief Minister fall. With Zhao Wei behind the Queen, her position is extremely stable. After you go back, inform the Queen of Jingyun's identity and directly push him to the throne." You hold the power of the regent's palace and can assist Jingyun and govern on his behalf. Ji Xian valued Gu Huizi before, but now Gu Huizi he was his son-in-law, so he felt more at ease to entrust Dezhou to him. Yes, Gu Huizi responded. Ji Xian whispered, be kind to Zhao Er. Gu Huizi looked serious, I will never let you down in this life. Ji Xian suddenly smiled, if you betray her, she will deal with you without me taking action. Gu Huizi thought of Su Wan's soft eyebrows and said, it's as sweet as sugar. The news that the two people were leaving Ziliang Kingdom spread in the palace. Wei Yang, his wife, and a pair of children came, and the queen also came. Everyone sat around the table to have dinner, and there was constant laughter, and there was no parting. Sadness, it's joy. In the Qin mansion, the lights were brightly lit. Qin Yang packed his baggage, and Mrs. Jian sobbed next to him, Ms., where are you going? If you leave, what will we, the mothers, do? You guys wait for me here. I'll be back in a year at most. Qin Yang inquired about the news, and Gu Qingsong sent Gu Yunzhen to Beima Temple. The child was born to Lu and Suzhou. Gu Huizi refused to recognize Gu Qingsong, and there was a deep gap between father and son. And he is the key person who caused this misunderstanding. He plans to save the country by going to Dazhu to apologize to Gu's mother and explain the whole story to Gu's mother. Qian was stunned, 1 year. Qin Yang didn't intend to explain. He pushed Qianxi in front of him, put on his big cloak and strode into the night. Mr. Xianggong, Qian chased him out. Qin Yang turned a deaf ear, got on his horse and galloped towards the city gate. The author has something to say. Ruan Bao actually likes the character of Gu Mu, who protects her shortcomings and has a bad temper. Even if she is decades younger, she can still be a protagonist. Good night, babies, okay. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 269. The winter nights were cold, with white snow falling from the dark sky. Gu Qing stood in front of the window wearing dark clothes. The ground is covered with a layer of silver and white, and the house is decorated with red, which makes it really beautiful. Gu Qingsong couldn't feel the joy of the approaching new year, only the endless coldness of this snowy night. He couldn't help but think of the last New Year in Xinghua village. At that time, Gu Huizi was a scholar, with good harvests in the fields and abundant harvests in the mountains. On the day before New Year's Eve, he bought new clothes for Gu Huizi and Mrs. Lu and entered the house. When I was walking, I saw Mr. Lu sewing the last stitch, biting off the thread, and turned around and smiled at him, my father, you're back just in time. Go wash your hands and try on this dress. Does it fit? He was stunned and stood at the door, letting Mrs. Lu pick up the newly made new underwear and mark it on him. Finally, she stuffed it into his arms and urged him to change it. After Gu Qingsong washed his hands and put on his clothes, he realized that the clothes were made of fine cotton. This was the first time in many years that he put on muslin after his family fell into ruin. He took it off and handed it to Mrs. Lu, I am a rough man, why do I wear such fine clothes? Let's change these clothes and give them to Huizi. Mrs. Lu glared at him, Huizi is still growing, and he is wearing too good clothes. If he jumps around, these clothes will be wasted. You put them on first, and then change them for Huizi to wear when they can no longer be worn. Gu Qingsong didn't sleep for a long time that night. The conditions at home were better, but his wife and children still had to live frugally. Around the second watch, Mrs. Lu got up at night. He closed his eyes and felt her light an oil lamp, take out a box of ointment, take out a piece of ointment, put it in the palm of her hand and let it melt before rubbing it on his back. Only then did Gu Qingsong understand why Mrs. Lu, who had always been frugal, changed him into fine cotton clothes. It was all because of the injury on his back. When she fell asleep, he turned over, hugged Mrs. Lu, took out the newly bought silver hairpin from under the pillow, and put it on her head. At dawn the next day, he went to the mountains and dug a sack of winter bamboo shoots. When he came back, it was already dark. Mrs. Lu put on new clothes, wore the silver hairpin on her head, and stood at the door with a smile, waiting for him to return home. It was also a snowy night like this. The whole family put on new clothes and sat around the stove. Gu Huizi told him interesting things about the academy, while Mrs. Lu was frying taro aside, with a small pot hanging on the stove and a pot of wine warming. The firelight made Liu's eyebrows gentle. She heard Gu Huizi say that the auspicious snow heralds a good harvest. She looked forward to a good harvest in the coming year, so that she could save more money and do some small business in the future. He would not have to hunt in the mountains all day, fearing he will encounter danger. Gu Huizi could study quietly without worrying about the expense of rushing for exams. She was probably happy. She talked a lot that night. Even when Gu Huizi is in high school, he will get married. The family will have a small income, so that he can give more betrothal gifts and make the bride look good, and call her the Zhang family. Knowing that the Gu family is not ungrateful, they will not look down on Zhang Mixu just because Gu Hui has a bright future. If they take a fancy to the bride, outsiders will not gossip about the bride's high aspirations. Gu Huizi said quietly, "What if I fail the exam?" Mrs. Lu was choked and stared at him. She immediately made him poo a few times and said childlike things. Gu Huizi naturally did not follow the instructions, but took a sip of wine quite speechlessly. Mrs. Liu's dissatisfaction with him doubled. "You have been drinking at a young age. Today is New Year's Eve. I will not scold you and punish you by not eating fried taro." Gu Huizi opened his eyes slightly and stared at the fragrant taro in the pot. After a while, he turned away and sighed a few times. Mrs. Lu immediately laughed heartily and shoveled a large piece of taro for him. He listened quietly, watching the mother and son bickering, and his heart was filled with warmth. He felt that she was thinking too far, but the atmosphere was so good that he couldn't help but imagine the days she described, feeling particularly hopeful. It is a pity that the future did not develop as Lu envisioned. He left his mother and son and became a general in another country, while other women enjoyed happiness by his side. Mrs. Lu did not open a shop and lived in poverty. After suffering the loss of her husband, she then suffered the pain of the death of her youngest son. Gu Huizi didn't go to high school, and he didn't marry Zhang Mixu. Instead, he married the eldest daughter of an official family. Gu Qingsong couldn't help but think of the two words Suwan asked the maid to tell him. It was like drinking coptis water, and the bitter taste spread from his mouth to the bottom of his heart. After reviewing the first half of his life in Xinghua village, the sky became slightly brighter. Gu Qingsong went to take a bath, changed into court clothes and went to the morning court, preparing to have a good talk with Gu Huizi. As soon as they arrived at the palace gate, they heard discussions and the envoys of Zhou dynasty had already left. After questioning, he learned that Gu Huizi and Suwan were among them. He immediately rode a horse and chased them to the city gate, and after questioning the soldiers guarding the city gate, he found out that they had been gone for a long time, for more than an hour, and he was afraid that he would not be able to catch up. The snowflakes all over the sky seemed to have fallen into my heart and condensed into ice. Gu Huizi didn't want to recognize him, and he didn't even want to stay with him for a long time, which shows how deep his prejudice against him was. Gu Qingsong felt unspeakable bitterness as he returned to Changxin Palace alone. Looking at the huge mansion, the hole in his heart seemed to be even bigger, and his heart felt empty. His wife and children are all in Dazhu, and everything in Ziliang has no meaning to him. Gu Qingsong suddenly woke up and seemed to have figured out something. He strode to the study, took out the military talisman, rode his horse to the palace, and asked the queen to win the title and allow him to resign and return to his hometown. Wei Yang looked at Gu Qingsong with a sincere expression in surprise, her eyes falling on the military talisman. She had heard about Gu Qingsong's deeds and knew why he acted like this. You have to think clearly. It was your lack of dedication and responsibility that separated you husband and wife, father and son for many years. When they needed you most, you were not by their side. Now your role is to them, it's optional. If you abandon the king with a different surname in Ziliang and return to the Zhou dynasty, you won't be forgiven by their mother and son, will you regret it? Your Majesty, back then Wei Chen wanted power, but 11 Liang was in short supply of generals at that time. Wei Chen could get what he wanted in the shortest time, and then return to Zhou dynasty to find the enemy who plotted to kill me. Things were not what Wei Chen thought. It's so simple, and the ministers get what they want, but they also lose their freedom. Although they are successful, they can't easily return to their hometown. At that time, they forgot that the original purpose of climbing to their current status was what? It was to return to Dezhou and avenge their family. But in the end he put the cart before the horse. He had to swallow the bitter consequences he had suffered now. Wei Yang was right. Gu Qingsong thanked the emperor for his kindness and felt that his blood was rushing all over his body. He returned to the mansion and handed over the family property to the housekeeper to take care of. Then he met him in Dazhu, packed his bags as he pleased, and went to Dazhu. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 270. Gu Huizi and Suwan were worried that the remnants of the Lu family would be harmful to Gu's mother in Dazhu, so they did not dare to stay any longer along the way. Only when they couldn't bear it any longer, would they find an inn to freshen up, have a good meal, and then hurry up. Keep on your way. The journey that originally took more than 3 months was shortened by nearly half, and it took 2 months to reach the Great Zhou dynasty. When I went to Ziliang, the capital was full of withered yellow. When I came back, it was already early spring, and the grass and branches were all sprouting new green and bearing flower buds. Suwan opened the curtain and took a quick look. The grass was green in the wild and the air smelled fresh. The heavy cotton-padded jacket on my body has been replaced by a thin spring shirt. Finally back, Suwan raised her face, and the drizzle fell on her face. A burst of coldness made the hairs on her arms rise, every bone in my body is shaking and falling apart. I have to wait for another 10.5 days on the way to the moon. You have to find a doctor to reset my bones piece by piece. Gu Huizi put a thin cloak on her shoulders. Although it is spring, it is still late in spring. It is cold outside. You should wear more clothes to avoid catching the wind and cold. As soon as Suwan's excitement passed, she felt really cold. She shivered as if to force the cold out, and quickly lowered the curtain. The smile on her face had never fallen since she saw the gate of the capital. You didn't tell mother we were coming, did you? There will be a surprise for her later. Suwan had already found out that Gu's mother could not stay idle in the capital, cooking 3 meals a day for the doctors in her medical clinic. Let's go to the medical clinic first. No. Go back to the house and take a shower first. I smell all over myself. Gu Huizi saw that she had lost weight. She was originally thin, but now she looked even more haggard. He rubbed her face with his fingers distressedly. I think she was frightened. The smile on Suwan's face fell, and she quickly cheered up again. She sat on his lap, put her arms around his neck, and her eyes seemed to be filled with light, dark and bright. We can tell mother. 11 Liang regarded thinness as beauty, so I followed the local customs and made a special effort to lose weight. Gu Huizi had no expression on his face and just pinched her slim waist with his palms. The waist that had just been grasped by both hands was now almost grasped by one hand. Suwan felt guilty. When Gu Huizi went to deal with things, She was too tired. After taking a bath in the inn, she fell asleep on the bed without drying her hair. When he came back, his hair was almost dry, which made him sulky. He asked the waiter to cook a bowl of ginger soup and brought a stove to dry her hair and dissipate the cold air. But all the hard work was in vain. She was actually ill after all. She didn't get sick easily, and she was really sick. She had been sick for almost half a month, and she lost a lot of weight during this illness. Suwon smiled and leaned over to kiss him. Walixi said, actually, having a minor illness every year can increase the body's resistance. If you get sick again in the future, you will be cured quickly. The reason why I am seriously ill this time is because I have been able to recover from it before. It's so good, because I don't get sick easily. Gu Huizi put his palm on her forehead and pushed her head away. According to what you said, I have been sick for many years and I will be immune to all diseases in the future. You are so smart. Suwon pulled his head closer, nibbled on the corner of his lips, buried her face in his neck, and said softly, Mom, she will definitely feel distressed when she sees me so thin, so I can take her to the second brother and third sister, and let her take care of my food and daily life, so that no other people will disturb her, and you can handle your official duties with peace of mind. Gu Huizi saw her acting coquettishly and sighed helplessly. You can't wear such a thin spring shirt until the weather gets warmer. I know. To prove that what she said was true, Suwon tightened her cloak and tied the belt into a knot. Gu Huizi reached out and flicked her head. Suwon subconsciously wanted to hide, but finally thought that she still had something to ask of him, so she closed her eyes and did not hide. Warm lips landed on her lips. Suwon opened her eyes in surprise and stuck out her tongue to lick him. He grabbed her and entangled her even more deeply. The carriage stopped in front of the Gu mansion. Chi Shiliu jumped out of the carriage and opened the curtain of the carriage. Gu Huizi hugged Suwon and got out of the carriage. The door of the house opened, and Chi Wu rubbed his hands excitedly. Miss, Uncle, you are finally back. He stood aside and let them in. Come in, Mrs. Who has made a table of hot dishes waiting for you. When Suwon heard this, she immediately stuck her head out. Do you know that we are back? I don't know, we didn't tell you. Suwon quickly broke away from Gu Huizi's arms and walked quickly into the house. Chi Wu, go get a bucket of hot water. I want to take a bath. Then she ordered Mrs. who was walking towards her, go and give it to me quickly. My mother and I are packing up our suitcases and we are going to live in the mountains for a long time. Mrs. who was surprised and said, Miss, you just came and are you leaving again? I have something to do. Suwon didn't dare to stay in the capital any longer, so she urged, you guys go quickly. Mrs. who looked at Gu Huizi, Uncle, do you want to take care of it? No need. Gu Huizi went to the study. A secret guard appeared and closed the door. How is it in the palace? Gu Huizi sat behind the desk and opened the secret letters stacked on the table. The emperor has been unconscious since you left. The prince learned that you were not in Dazhu and tried to contact his confidants to rescue him. After knowing that it was in vain, he calmed down and seemed to accept his fate. However, the queen suddenly left the palace and went to the country. Temple, brought the queen mother back. Why don't you report this matter? Gu Huizi's face darkened. Find out what happened. What happened in the past 2 days? My subordinates guessed that you were returning to Beijing in these 2 days. You came and went at about the same time, so you didn't send any news. The secret guard explained the reason in a low voice. The old lady of Zhao Mansion is going after offering incense in the national temple. He was detained at the queen mother's place. The queen compromised and took the queen mother back to the palace. Gu Huizi had a headache. The queen mother entered the palace, just like a fish entering the water. It would not be easy to deal with her again. Prepare the car, I'll go to Duke Zhao's mansion. Gu Huizi put away the secret letter and told his servants to let Suwon eat first without waiting for him. After Suwon took a bath, she heard that Gu Huizi was not at the house. She ate a bowl of rice in a hurry, then asked Chi Wu to carry the box and cage to the carriage, and went directly to the hospital. Gu's mother tidied up the hospital and prepared to go to the shop to buy cloth and make some spring shirts for Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun. After greeting the doctors, Gu's mother went to the street carrying a basket. The secret guards followed behind her to protect her. Gu's mother entered a shop and selected a few pieces of cloth. Her eyes fell on the silver-red cloth. She immediately thought of Suwon and felt that this color matched her very well. Suwon would definitely look good in it. Counting the time, Suwon would be back when the clothes were ready, and she would be ready to put them on. After picking up some pieces of cloth for Suwon and Gu Huizi, Gu's mother paid the money and was about to leave while carrying the cloth, but she was blocked by someone.